What's up, everyone, and welcome to ClearTalk. So in this video, we're going to be talking about this new golden age that Trump has been touting about in recent weeks, since he's been elected, or since he became president, and whether it's really a golden age. What does that mean, really? Or is it actually just a new Gilded Age? Or have we already been living in a new Gilded Age? Um, I, this is going to be interesting. So thank you very much for joining me. And if you like the content I've been doing, please consider subscribing, like, share, comment, all that good stuff. And to help the algorithm and help the channel and all that good stuff, support me and all those wonderful YouTube ways. And if you want to as well, check out my other channels: JMD Drummer, JMDPLAY. You have the and subscribe to those as well. That would be fantastic. Check out the Discord there, one-time donations QR there, or you can go to JMD Nation Patreon if you want to do a little bit more and do the $3 a month there. That would be amazing if you do. But any kind of support is much appreciated, and you're awesome. So, thank you very much. All right, so if you've been listening here the past week or so, um, or since Trump was inaugurated, sworn in, all that good stuff. He's been. I've been noticing he's been touting this idea of this new era that he is going to bring about, and he's been calling it the golden age. All right, this is the golden age. Is what they're going to bring about. But what does that really mean for starters? And if we what's his term for it? What is he thinking about that? And it feels as if he's talking about like this boom in economics, or the economy and stuff, and just bringing about this beautiful um, prosperity of sorts, I guess you could say. And he's been saying it though in a way that it's like everybody, right? And of course, now granted, we could narrow down the nuances of some of his policies, or the numerous executive orders and stuff that they've been doing. And there's been plenty of people that have pointed out that if that's a lot of the executive orders, especially pertaining to the campaign promises of, like, bringing down inflation, or or lowering prices of stuff for people, to help out the people's economy, right? Because we've started to realize that there seems to really be two different economies, oftentimes in play, uh, running in parallel, and that's the wealthy economy versus the poor economy, right? I mean, we've started to see this for a while now. I mean, and have identified it, been talking about it. The understanding that it's not really so much about left versus right, or Democrat versus Republican, but it's really, or that's what the progressive side has been trying to argue anyways, that it's the wealthy versus the poor, the wealthy, the elites, versus everybody else, basically the working class, the poor, the bottom half of society. And actually more than the bottom half, really. But that's what we've been trying to argue here. The only real difference when it comes to left and right is how we see who the elites are and where the corruption is. All right, that seems for me to be the big difference, which the right seems to deem the corruption being Washington, and while albeit that is correct to a degree, the corruption in Washington has to do with elites, meaning the wealthy, the corporations, the ultra rich billionaires, which is what the progressive side or the left leaning argument for elites is. Our problem, yes, Washington is a problem, but it's a problem because of the elites, meaning the rich, have taken over Washington. Where for right wing, it seems to be more that Washington is the elites and that they are just, corrupt, and it's not really the rich that's the problem. The Washington is regulating and controlling the rich and preventing the rich from prospering the rest of society. That's the way the right seems to look at it. But like me on the left, like I said, we're considering more of like the rich is taking over the government to skew laws and things to make them richer and improve their lives, not necessarily our lives, which is the whole idea that has pretty much been entrenched since Reagan, in this trickle down economic idea. But all that aside, that's what it seems to be, that Trump's golden age is just bringing about this, his idea, or his at least perception that he's trying to sell as a prosperous time for everybody, right? But when we look back in history, there has been a time before that was promised and kind of coined to some degree as a golden age, as a golden era. And that was what has since been coined the Gilded Age, because of the lack or the correction in what the Gold Age really meant in that time. And that was the era between the 1870s and the 1890s, right before 1900, in the late 19th century. This is where you did indeed have an economic boom and stuff. This was after the Reconstruction era, which was after the Civil War, American Civil War, where you had a lot of battling between the southern states and the northern states. Blah blah blah. That was a Reconstruction era. In reformation of rights and stuff for different people. Still, granted, it didn't come and really come into full effect till way later, as far as like full rights and things. But nevertheless, that was the Reconstruction age. Where the Gilded Age, or what was promised to be the Golden Age, Golden Era, was the 1870s to the 1890s. This is an era of great economic boom. True enough, it was. You had the large growth in railroad work, and other different things. The economy grew tremendously during that time. It was one of the largest growths in U.S. history. We grew larger in the economy than much of Europe did, becoming the world leader in economic growth. True enough. But what happened, though, is that was also the age of what became known as the robin bearers, where you had the rich elites, which had control of all of this, begotten richer and richer and richer, and you started to see a wage gap steadily increase. Because where you had wages were increasing overall across the United States, wages were increasing even at a higher rate than they were in other places of the other parts of the world, from Europe to Germany to Japan, everybody, but also our cost of living was going up at the same time. So even though wages were increasing for the even the poorest of poor, they were increasing. We also had large uh, cost of living and everything, which sort of negated a lot of that. In a very much uh, coalescing of money and wages and wealth within the top 1 to 10% of society, way higher than the bottom 10% or 40%. Um, so this was, and a lot of corruption and stuff happened during this time, uh, and through our political corruptions and everything else all through this time, and uh, wealthy corruptions and stuff. There's a bunch of corruption going on during this time as well. So, granted, yes, economy was great and was booming, but you started to have a major growth separation between the ultra wealthy and the wealthy, and of course the bottom of society. Um, and which is ultimately what ushered in the progressive era, which was the start of the 1900s, which saw the growth, some policy adjustments and changes, started to see growth in a middle class growing and ushering in that progressive thought, which was more on calming social and that separation, which is where which started with Teddy Roosevelt, and then ultimately ended up in FDR, which that lasted from the 1900s to 1930s, ultimately ushering in FDR at the end with the New Deal, which saw, like I said, a complete shrinking of that wage gap, growth of the middle class, and all that. Granted, there was a lot of other things. There was some bad things that happened through that time as well, but you know, that's the case. All right, so you have the reason why that age is coined the Gilded Age, though, was because of that separation, and the idea of being gilded as being just um, covered in gold, or covered, it's like gold plated, so something that's made to look flashy, but it ultimately up underneath, it's not real. Which is a lot of promises were being made at that time by the leaders of that time, and that's another time also where you had the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, which were by that point the dominating parties, although they were almost opposite of they are now. Your Democratic Party was more of the conservative type party. Republican was more of the a little bit more like the Democratic Party to a degree, a little bit more liberal. Um, and that's the reason why most of the South actually were Democrats at that time. Your Republicans were more the north part of the country. And but they were just stated that during that time, the policy actual differences between the two were very small. They had done kind of coalesced down. They were, there wasn't a whole lot of difference between them. So even when you did have any kind of flip flopping in leadership, as far as from the presidential level or whatever, and policy level, there wasn't much going on. So they considered that era of presidents basically the dead presidents, because they or the forgotten presidents. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get that correct. The forgotten presidents, because they just really didn't do anything of significance to make themselves remembered in history. So then you had, of course, then that led into which, funny enough, that era ended with um, William McKinley, which, if you've heard anything lately on Trump's part, that he has become one of Trump's new favorite presidents. Uh, Interestingly enough, I mean, that's the reason why he's changing the mountain back to Mount McKinley. All these, he's become a font. He previously, his favorite was Andrew Jackson. Now, in this, and which is in the first term. Now in his second term, his favorite is McKinley, which I find very interesting. McKinley was a president towards the end of the 19th century, the 1897 to 1901. He was he had two terms, but his second term, he was actually assassinated in his second term. He was only in office back then. They took office. It seemed around March, or at least he took office in March, March to March. So he had 4 years his first term, and then he took office for his second term in March of 1901, and was assassinated around September, I think September 6th or something like that, of 1901, which is when Theodore Roosevelt took over, because Theodore Roosevelt was his vice president. But that's the interesting, and what he is most known for, funny enough, also was tariffs. He was big and hard on tariffs. His first 4 years, he was major with tariffs. Considered tariffs to be like the big thing to make the government money or whatever, which didn't really work. The reason why, and that's the reason why, even in his second term, even though he still believed in tariffs, he actually came in his second term being a little bit more lenient on the tariffs. He actually dropped down, wasn't quite as heavy as he was the first time around. But ultimately, he wound up being assassinated early in his term, and that's when Theodore Roosevelt took over. So, not sure if Trump really wants to associate himself there. Not trying to say anything, but it's take that as you will. But that for me is very interesting. That it was promised for it to be a golden age, which, granted, it was. It was for the ultra wealthy rich. It was the golden age for them. But for everybody else, it was limited. Even if your wages did increase, it still did not allow you to enough money to consider a lot. Most were not. We're still considered poverty level, and you were still even to make any kind of decent money, you were having to work 60+ hours. So it was just heavy work. A lot of that period also was a period of a lot of people dying due to work and everything. It was a lot of work injury related stuff in that time as well. So, yeah, that was it was a golden age for them. But like I said, it ultimately was coined the Gilded Age because it was just it was kind of fake, at least for the rest of for the society as a whole. It was a surface pretending to have like a social significance for society, but ultimately it was just an economic growth for the rich. So that leads me to now. What have we been seeing? Well, let me back up. What you had was, the progressive era come in that led to a shrinkage, a little bit of shrinkage of the growing of the middle class, which ultimately led to FDR and the New Deal, which then increased heavily the middle class and shrunk the wage gap tremendously. That was continued through Eisenhower and even through L.B. Johnson, even to some degree expanded through them. uh, until you ultimately had uh, those who were kind of the anti-New Deal people usher in a new Republican Party. The progressive movement is what actually flipped the parties too. At that time, there was a sort of complete shift in the parties during that time, where the Democratic Party sort of melted more into the progressive movement, and the Republican Party went more conservative. And that's when you had uh, people that were anti-New Deal, or whatever, really swung right and conservative and created the new conservative Republican era, which ultimately ushered in Reagan. Now, Reagan was originally a proponent of the New Deal. He liked it. He was a Hollywood, I mean, he didn't have, he actually didn't really have any problem with the New Deal. Thought it was a good thing. But then once he got in office, or before getting in office, he was persuaded to kind of flip his ideas. And when he took office, he ushered in what we now know as, Reaganomics, the trickle down idea, and a complete reversal of the New Deal. In what we've had by since then going on is, little by little, the wage gap has increased. The rich have gotten richer and richer and richer and richer. They've had more influence and more influence in politics. To now, here we are in Trump 2.0. He already, his first term, had the most billionaires and stuff in his administration. Now, his second term, he has even more, and billionaires with even more wealth on top of that. We talked about in the previous video where he, had, the billionaires and stuff were in front of even the people that were supposed to be in his administration and on his inauguration day. They were front and center. If this is what you have, is in my opinion a complete coup of our government going on by elites. And I think there've been argument recently that this is ushering in the new Gilded Age. We're 100 years out, and we're ushering in a new Gilded Age, where the rich and wealthy have coalesced and have worked for the past 50 years, to completely deconstruct everything that happened during the first 50 years of the 20th century. And we, and they have taken back over and have gotten us back to where we were pre 1900. But I would say that you could argue, me personally, that we've been in the new Gilded Age. That it's just been a little more slow and a little more precise, and they didn't just rapidly do it. They're rapidly doing it now, but it's been like a slow takeover. That pretty much, I would say, really took off in the early 1990s. But since then, you've had a very much of a takeover of our government, to the point now we are, Trump is established in the executive orders for, a stronger Schedule F, where he can eliminate people out of our administrative, departments and stuff, of people that were not loyal to him, and can implement in people that he, are loyal to him, which is including, rich and wealthy people as well. This is, you have the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, at his right side. I mean, right beside him, and having large influence, at least up to now, in his administration. We're only a week in, but he has pretty much gained a lot of strength there. You've got a coalition of others that have come into the fold. Jeff Bezos folded, throughout the past year. Here recently, Mark Zuckerberg folded. I mean, you've got this coalition of all these super ultra wealthy rich people coming into the fold and bending the knee, and they're really, trying to take full control of our government. Our government even in, I think it was in this past week when he talked to the economic forum or whatever with the Davos or whatever, which is a kind of a conference of, all these CEOs and, wealthy businessmen stuff all together, and they were asking him questions and whatnot. And he pretty much said, he was basically saying, as he has said before, the U.S. is open for business. So Trump is ultimately completely transforming. We've made, jokes about the, our federal government being a business, and acting like a business or whatever at times. But he's truly, it looks like he is turning our government into a complete, full-on corporation where the ultra elite are going to coalesce and bring about power to where they can implement a new CEO and a new CEO and a new CEO and a new CEO over and over and over again. And that's what I'm seeing happening. And I agree. So it's going to take, and the last time this happened, what, like I said, ultimately ushered in the progressive era in the early 1900s was a backlash to the robber barons and the wage, separation gap that was happening, where people, were fighting against. You had all kinds of, groups forming, your labor unions and all this kind of different things arguing, against this, growing wealth inequality, and ultimately, wind up pressures and leaders that, decided to take that on, and they kind of brought us out of that to a degree and was getting us on the right path away from that. But then lo and behold, Ronald Reagan walked in and said, "Hold my fucking beer," and took over and completely screwed that up. It's time for, we've got to, this is not a time to just let it happen. We've got to continue talking about it, continue informing people about it, continue speaking this out and letting people know and getting people informed and and trying to persuade, trying to make people realize that this is what's going on. The elites are not here to help you. This is not some fantasy world where you bend the knee to these elites and they will, reward you with wealth beyond your means or beyond your ever, your dreams or whatever. That's not the way this works. At least not for the majority of society. You have to be like the Ben Shapiro's of the world and stuff in order for that to happen. You completely sell yourself out like that, and they can't go but so far. We've got to start some reformation, and it needs to happen fast. To try to move us out of this, and they're so open and blatant with it now. It's not even, they're not even trying to hide it. It's just full on right in your face. the elites and powerful are all there. Um, and that's the big difference now, and why we should be able to see it faster and be able to fight against it faster, because it is in our face, and we have the access, and we have the information. We have, you know, uh, uh, the past to learn from. So we need to bring in a new era of progressiveness, a new progressive era, and kick these wealthy rich to the curb. Uh, and I'm hoping, even though I'm small and seemingly probably insignificant, but I'm hoping that in some little tiny way I am helping here to spread some word. Hopefully you will spread the word. Hopefully this, and there's others in this space that are way bigger than me that are also spreading the word, but I constantly even hear from them that we need more voices in the space, and that continues to press me to keep going and keep growing this channel, as small as it may and insignificant as it may be. Hopefully, in some way, at some time, I can eventually become a voice in the space that can help influence. Maybe not, but hopefully. But that's what I wanted to talk to you about in this video. Gonna cut it on off now. Gone longer than I planned, but thank you very much for getting this far. If you did, you're amazing. Hell, comment down below new progressive era or something. And if you're still here with me. So thank you very much, and leave a comment also about what you think. Do you think this is the case? Do you think this has been going on, or this is just starting, or is this ultimately maybe even the beginning of the end for this age? I mean, if history repeats itself, Trump might actually be the end of it. And I'm not saying the end of him. I'm just saying the end of the age. But thank you very much. And yeah, let me know in the comments. The next time, peace, clear talk. I'm out.